3.
Good Saturday morning to everybody, and welcome to Hyperfit MD with Dr. Charles Guglin. How are you? Francesca as well. Dr. Charles and Francesca Guglin. How's that?
Yes, the beautiful Francesca.
The beautiful. Good. It's great to see you guys. How have you been?
Great.
How was your week?
It's been a good week.
Yeah?
It's been a good week. Yeah.
Good.
Allergies are hitting big time.
You noticed that?
Yeah.
I just, yesterday, I started coming down with a cough. And I can't figure this out. And you know what my wife said? Trees.
Yeah.
Because they're all popping.
Yeah.
I never heard of that, though. Why would I start coughing because of trees?
Well, there's grass pollen out there, too. Don't forget, the grass is coming up. That's what gets me. I have a wicked cough. I was going to apologize for that ahead of time because grass pollen gets me this time of year big time.
All right. So I guess you're the person to ask. I had no idea. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah.
I know sneezing or wheezing or you get, red eyes or watery eyes, but coughing? Yeah.
Is it an itchy cough, like somebody's got a feather down there and going like that?
Right here.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Like a chest cough almost.
Yeah. And there's nothing coming up except pain and misery.
Well, I hope it doesn't last long.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, the allergy season, if you think about it, could be like a month and a half. Right?
Sure.
Oh,
it depends on what you're allergic to, though.
I don't need that.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Insulin resistance.
There you
We're
go.
going to be talking about that this morning.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about insulin resistance, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, that's a good question. What is it? What are we talking about it for?
You kind of threw me
exactly.
for a loop on this one.
Insulin resistance, if you're going to talk about any kind of nutritional plan, let's say, and I'm not talking about diets here, I'm talking about lifestyle and eating, you need to talk about insulin resistance first. Next week, we're going to talk about Mediterranean. I don't want to say diet. I want to say lifestyle.
I've heard good things about that, by the way, so something to look forward to.
And you sort of have to talk about insulin resistant first. If you're going to talk about anything, if you're going to talk about keto, if you're going to talk about fat free, paleo, they're all basically designed by whomever designed them to avoid insulin resistance, which is kind of the progenitor of all disease when you think about it, when you boil it down.
So what exactly is it then?
Insulin resistance. Well, let's talk about normal insulin. Let's talk about normal insulin metabolism. When you eat something, let's say you eat a piece of cake. Let's say you're floating around with an empty stomach. You haven't eaten anything for 8 hours or so. Typically, your blood sugar is between, let's say, 75 and 90. All right. When you eat something, your blood sugar spikes up. Your pancreas responds by secreting insulin, which takes that sugar that's in your bloodstream and moves it into the cells. As we get older and as a result of lifestyle issues, many of us become insulin resistant, which means that you eat that same piece of cake that we're talking about. Your blood sugar starts at 75, it spikes up to 120, and your pancreas cranks out insulin, but your cells have become resistant to that insulin. So what you wind up with is having huge swings in blood sugar over time. Once the insulin does its job, it moves that sugar into the cells, which eventually becomes fat. It makes us fatter to be insulin resistant. And controlling insulin by controlling your insulin levels, your serum insulin levels, by virtue of a specific lifestyle, is a way towards health and a way towards avoiding disease, diabetes in particular. We're really talking about diabetes.
Okay, because that's the first thing that I thought of when you mentioned the word insulin. I'm thinking to myself, I know diabetics who are on insulin.
Right.
So I was wondering if you were going to go there.
Yeah.
When you talk about blood sugar level, and all right, you said you start with a base of like 75 to 90 or something, and you have that piece of cake, and it shoots up to 125. I'm comprehending the numbers. I'm comprehending why it would spike up. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what does that really mean? Like, what is it doing to you? Is that making me more lethargic? Is that going to make me more active? Will that make me more tired? What is it? What are the side? I don't even know. I don't even think even side effects is even the right word or the right term. What are the results? Maybe what will that? What is a higher blood sugar count and a lower blood sugar count? What do they each respectively result in?
Well, it's really more about swings in blood sugar than the sugar count itself. When we are insulin resistant, we eat that same piece of cake, and we talk about 120, your blood sugar will swing up to 150, 180. Your pancreas cranks out a lot of insulin because you're resistant to that insulin, and so then your blood sugar goes from 180 to 120 to 100 to 80, 60, 40. An hour and a half, 2 hours later, your blood sugar is 40, and what happens? Your brain is screaming for sugar, and what do? You eat a box of donuts, right?
Well, maybe not a box.
Well,
couple, maybe.
Yeah, a couple maybe, or whatever, and then you're swinging right back up again. And so, being insulin resistant results in these swings in blood sugar. And when that insulin level comes up and pushes that blood sugar down, it's moving that sugar into fat cells for the most part, and you're getting fatter and fatter as time goes on.
All right, so then the goal is to keep your blood sugar as low as possible, right? Well,
Keep your insulin. Well, that you got your handle on. You've got your handle on the throttle, but you're not talking about the brakes here. What you're really talking about is keeping your insulin levels low all the time. Okay, and you control your insulin levels by.
But isn't your insulin level connected to your blood sugar level?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
absolutely.
When I talk to somebody who's saying that their level is 50, where all right, so let me ask it this way: where should it hover around normally?
Just where I told you, your blood sugar in that 75 to 100 range. Anything less than 100 in a fasting blood sugar in my practice is fine with me. So,
what's the lowest you've ever seen someone?
In the 40s.
If it dips lower than the 40s,
you just pass out. You get sweaty. You feel terrible. I mean, this happened on an airplane a couple times, a couple of flights ago. Actually, I was alone. I was on my way to Malta, actually. This woman stood up and passed out. And they did that thing. Is there a doctor on board? And I usually kind of go like this, But nobody stood up. And there's like 300 people on this plane. I could not believe there wasn't another doctor on board. But anyway, I finally get up, and I go and I feel her pulse. It's going on. It's like 140, her pulse. She's sweaty everywhere. She's looking kind of whiffy. And it was just, she had all the symptoms of low blood sugar. And a glass of orange juice, she felt better. So having a low blood sugar, that's kind of the way you feel, to the point where you'll just drop.
Okay, Now let's look at the other end of that. What's the highest blood sugar you've ever seen, and then what does that result in?
People who are undiagnosed diabetics, or people who are diabetics who are not taking care of themselves, those blood sugars can swing into the 300s, 400s. You don't really feel it when your blood sugar gets that high. It's really more. It's not something that you feel symptomatically. It's just your body's cranking. Your body's trying to take care of that high blood sugar. But by the same token, if you're not metabolizing that blood sugar, the symptoms become kind of fairly acute when that blood sugar gets really high. Also,
do you talk about sweating and you pass out on the opposite end of that?
Yeah.
Are you lethargic? Are you you're not feeling energetic? I would presume. Or
Yeah, basically. The whole concept, they say don't give your kids sugar because it makes them energetic. That's garbage. That doesn't
kids
make
are going to
energetic.
eat candy and sugar no matter what.
That's right. If they do it in your house, they're going to do it in somebody else's house.
Well, of course.
Anyway,
And so it's a losing. You're not going to prevent a kid from eating candy. It's a losing battle. But I guess you can, I don't know, if monitor or watch. Monitor. You observe how much candy that they're intaking.
You know what it is? If you don't eat candy, your kids won't eat candy. Your kids do. We talk to our kids all day long,
until
and they don't hear a
hang out
word.
With their buddies after school, and their buddies are eating candy. You're like, oh, what's this?
Yeah, but they do what you do. Your kids do what you do.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
All right. So how does all this happen?
What did we talk about? Insulin resistance.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, the risk factors for insulin resistance are obesity. Okay, very much a sedentary lifestyle. All right, people who don't move. Family history of diabetes. There's very much a genetic component here in that regard. People as we age, we become more insulin resistant to a fair degree. We've talked about andropause and menopause. People having gone through andropause and menopause typically are more insulin resistant. Something you have to keep an eye on when you're treating those people. High blood pressure, untreated high blood pressure can lead to insulin resistance. Unchecked, if you are hyperlipidemic, people with high LDLs, people high HDLs, high cholesterol, they tend to be insulin resistant also. So a history of cardiovascular disease, a history of stroke. Those people tend to be insulin resistant also. And it's kind of the leading cause of what we know of as metabolic syndrome, what doctors call metabolic syndrome. Hypertension, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all that stuff. Doctors know of as metabolic syndrome.
You mentioned the word genetic. Not everybody that's got, not everybody that has diabetes, though, necessarily have parents or grandparents who are diabetic. No. It may be genetic for some.
Right. Yeah. There's all I'm saying really is that there's a genetic component to just about every chronic disease, whether it's small or large. Yeah, we all know that.
So then, how do you know if you're more susceptible for obtaining it or from gaining it, or how do you know if you have it?
Well, there's blood tests that we do. I mean, there's testing that we do that give it basically evidence of insulin resistance. If you come to me, for instance, the people come to our practice for that initial blood work, which is pretty extensive blood work. They've been fasting for 12 hours, and we test their blood sugar. We test what's called the glycomark, which that tests swings in blood sugar. We test hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month measure of your average blood sugar. And we also test your fasting insulin. So let's say you have been fasting for 12 hours and your fasting insulin level is like 25, you are insulin resistant. Basically, in men, we're looking for a fasting insulin of like less than 8, as low as possible. So in the clinic, there's tests that you can do to give an idea of what level of insulin resistance a person is talking about. But by the same token, visceral fat. If a guy comes in and he's got a 46-inch waist cantilevered over a 32-inch belt, he's been telling himself for 10 years that he's got a 32-inch waist, that guy is going, if he's not already insulin resistant, he's going to be, because belly fat drives what we call visceral fat, drives insulin resistance to a large degree. So in our practice, we're constantly in a fight over belly fat. We're constantly, we measure it on a fairly regular basis, and we are working against it pretty much all the time.
I would imagine that. Are women more prone, or are there different demographics, African American or?
African American, definitely, yes. African American, people of Latin descent, there are very definitely ethnic demographics which are more prone to insulin resistance.
I wonder why, though. Because I've heard that as well, which is why I mentioned it.
It's cultural. One of the reasons when we talk about Mediterranean diet next week, Mediterranean lifestyle next week, we're going to talk about that because very much it is cultural. Insulin resistance is rampant in the South where they eat a lot of food that's cooked in bad fat, stuff like that, okay? So lifestyle plays a huge role as well.
I guess what do you do to avoid it other than diet, right? You just don't eat things cooked in bad fat.
Well, it's really about sugar. What makes us prone to it is eating high glycemic foods. We'll talk about that next week. Basically, high glycemic food is any kind of food that makes your blood sugar spike. So we talk about white food all the time. Rice, pasta, bread, stuff like that. Things that your body, carbs, high carbs. High glycemic foods, foods that are rich in sugar, processed foods, person who is eating basically, and many of the foods that we eat are vitamin deficient also, which plays a huge role as well. So you avoid it by avoiding sugar, eating good fats, eating lots of vegetables, moderate amounts of protein, that kind of thing.
If once you have it, though, can you correct it? Can you not have it?
Yeah.
What about diabetes, though? Once you get diabetes, can you not get diabetes? Can you get rid of it?
Type 1 diabetes, no. You're genetically a diabetic. Type 1. Type 2 diabetes is acquired diabetes. So it's acquired by lifestyle. There is definitely a genetic component to it. But we say genetic component, but apropos what we were just talking about, we tend to eat the way our parents ate, okay? I mean, we've all been in the mall and walked behind the potato family, potato dad and potato mom and 2 little potato kids, You know that those kids aren't diabetics, but they're going to be because they eat the way their parents eat.
And their parents probably are already, right?
Yeah, or on their way there. And so, yes, the short answer to your question is yes. You can take a person who's a type 2 diabetic and insulin dependent, and by helping them lose 100 pounds and eat the appropriate way, you can get them off insulin and on oral anti-diabetics. You can take a person who has an oral anti-diabetics and fix their diabetes so they don't need it anymore. A lot of it has to do with lifestyle.
If someone is morbidly obese, does that elevate their chance of becoming
Absolutely.
either diabetic or,
heart disease,
heart disease, yeah.
Stroke, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, joint problems, the whole cluster of those kinds of things.
So let's take this and let's relate it to Hyperfit MD, where you have age management and we talk about this many times, you're taking preventative measures, right? Mm-hmm. What are some things that someone can do to get ahead of it and say, you know what, I think I'm traveling down this path? And I understand diet would be the obvious answer, but let's say genetic. Let's say they've got parents, both sets of parents, grandparents that have it, and they're like, and someone is like, wow, I can see myself going down this path as well. Mm-hmm. Is there anything right now, if I stop myself in my tracks, that can prevent me from becoming diabetic?
It's mostly it's mostly lifestyle related. Avoiding becoming diabetic, avoiding insulin resistance is mostly lifestyle related. There is new science coming out that we think of our genes as being something that are static, that we can't do anything about our genetic makeup. But there are very definitely ways of turning on and off genes that make us prone to this kind of thing. There's a lot of science going on about that these days. So, intermittent fasting, which you may have heard about. Thank you, because I totally skipped over that. Intermittent fasting, which you may have heard about, is a way of controlling your insulin levels. It's a way of avoiding and stopping insulin resistance, the process of insulin resistance.
Intermittent fasting. Folks, you're listening to Hyperfit MD with Dr. Charles and Francesca Guglin. I'm Gary Byron. All right, let's talk about intermittent fasting. And I'm glad that you didn't just say fasting, but intermittent fasting, because I know that there's a difference between the two.
Right.
Maybe you can go into that a little bit and then relate it to how it can help.
Sure. Intermittent fasting is basically going through a period of time every day where you're not eating anything, right. Okay? Especially coffee. Because coffee raises cortisol levels, which is part of the whole problem with insulin resistance. But anyway, Francesca and I try to do it. She's much better at it than I am. We try to do it Monday through Friday, and then weekends, all bets are off, right? Yep. But 16 hours. Basically.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I've done that.
Eat within the 8 hours.
Yeah, I've done that. And 8 hours usually from like noon till 8, right?
Depends
Exactly.
what time your last meal is. Just be flexible with your lifestyle. If you have dinner at 8 p.m., count 16 hours for your next meal. If you have dinner at 6 p.m., count 16 hours from that time.
Yeah. It's kind of better to do it in a pattern, though. Yeah. And so anyway.
That's tough.
Yeah. Well, it's actually not.
It's not.
If you're a total breakfast person, it is tough. It's really all about breakfast.
For me, it wasn't about breakfast. It was about coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I totally cheat when it comes to coffee.
You can have coffee if you really have to.
I was going to say, when you get up at the hour that my producer here, Ryan, when we get up, come on.
Yeah, you got to start your engine
throw
somehow.
me a bone here. Not only do I got to get up, I've got to be on.
Yeah.
So if you're allowing the caveat of coffee, if we can have that, okay, it's a little more tolerable.
Yeah. I mean, look, anything in moderation. I need to have a cup of coffee in the morning. So
no
matter,
sugar in your coffee.
So no matter what lifestyle I'm approaching. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say one. Just give me one lump, Francesca. Just give me one. You don't have to pour it. You don't have to pour it in there, but give me one lump for the love of God. I just.
All right, you may have a lump.
Thank you. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So that's really all about insulin resistance and avoiding insulin resistance, because during that 16 hours, your insulin levels are nice and steady and low. Okay, and so you're basically retraining your cells. You're retraining your cells who will your cells basically the level of receptors that your cells have for insulin changes from time to time. Again, something that is not static. So if you maintain a lifestyle where you are going long periods of time, you're basically training your body and training your cells to not be insulin resistant, and it's very helpful in that regard.
It's just so funny listening to you that everything is so connected: insulin resistance, diabetes, obesity, and really a lot of this starts, as we were discussing, childhood, and you become a product of the environment that you're growing up in when you observe your parents eat or eating the same foods that they're eating.
Yep.
So let's say a person has it, and you touched upon this, but if you can go maybe into a little bit more detail, if a person has it, what can they do? What can they do about it?
Glycemic diet.
Yes, they need to talk to a nutritionist, really. I mean, they need to get in the habit of moving, not necessarily exercising. I mean, exercising is great, okay? Weight-bearing exercise maintains muscle mass. Maintaining muscle mass, your resting metabolic rate goes up because muscles are the main source of caloric burning in your body. So maintaining muscle mass helps with insulin resistance. Moving helps with insulin resistance. Doing cardio is very helpful with it. But for the most part, you beat insulin resistance in the kitchen. And so learning how your body works, much of our practice is curriculum-based in terms of teaching people how their body works. Teaching a person, when they look at that plate of food which is about to go down the hatch, okay, understanding in a real fundamental way what that food is going to do once it gets past here. Because really food is only good like from here to like there, and then you have to deal, right? So you have to deal. So one of the things that we do in our practice is a 28-day detox. People, we've talked about this before.
Yeah, I have my wife stole it.
If they've been compliant with that 28-day detox, which is very much a low glycemic 28 days, I always encourage them to go out and eat a plate of pasta because they feel like crap. They just feel terrible. And then they understand the way they've been feeling their whole lives, They really tap into it. No, you may not speak.
Say something. I suggest that people Google low glycemic diet, low glycemic food, so they have an understanding of what food is low glycemic and what food is high glycemic. Also, when you're shopping in a market, avoid the center aisles, stick to the outer aisles because there's fruit and vegetables and protein.
Wow.
Learn how to shop, and most importantly, read labels of everything that you buy so you're not buying fructose.
Right.
Learn about simple carbs and complex carbs. You want to eat complex carbs. You want to avoid simple carbs.
Fructose is just another word for sugar, right?
But it's processed.
Fructose is, it is a sugar, but your body metabolizes fructose to glucose immediately before it leaves your stomach.
So
it's
all
basically
processed foods. So learn how to read labels, understand what everything is.
I had no idea about the inner workings of grocery stores. Stick to the outer.
Stick to the outer aisles, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is true. I'm thinking that's where the frozen section is on the one, produce on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Protein on the other side.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Protein's in the back.
Yeah.
Veggies and fruit are on one side, and then typically on the other side there's dairy, which is another story altogether. Part of what we try to get our clients to do is avoid dairy because it's very inflammatory. But that's another whole thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Are we meant to drink milk?
No, we weren't meant to drink milk. We were meant to drink breast milk, but cow's milk is a poor substitute, really.
Yet it's one of the most popular beverages.
Sure it is. I mean, look, there's 5 kids in my family, and my mom plunked down a gallon of milk at the dinner table every single night. That gallon of milk was gone by the time dinner was over. Whole milk, by the way.
Oh, that's fattening too.
It's awesome though.
But 2% milk.
Yeah. Well, that's about fat. That's not about sugar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But we're not meant to process or digest.
Yeah,
milk.
we're not really good at it. Yeah.
Which is why there's a lot of people who are lactose intolerant. You can do a whole show on that.
Lactose intolerance?
Oh, of all our dairy issues.
A lot of people who do what we do, you hear a lot of people do what we do when we go to these conferences and stuff, really are hard on people who consume dairy, on their patients that consume dairy. because
But dairy is also cheese. It's ice cream. It's
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
yeah.
It's milk based.
Well, right, but I mean, who's not going to have ice cream? You know, who's not going to have a piece of cheese on their burger?
Well, that's
or
the thing.
Cheese and
Anything-
crackers.
Yeah, anything in moderation is fine. You know, I mean, you have to live. God put food on this earth for sustenance, but it's also pleasurable for a reason. You know, sex is there for a reason, but it's also pleasurable. So that's another thing that we seek out. You know, so. Everything is a balance.
Good for your
Everything is a
health.
balance.
It's good for your health.
It's good for from the neck up, definitely.
Especially when you can't procreate anymore. You're not going to start having sex just
Yeah,
because
right.
you're not going to have children anymore. Okay, well, listen. Give us a little teaser about next week. I got a few seconds before I wrap everything up. I want to talk about this. That's a great topic.
Yeah, next week we're going to talk about what a lot of people call Mediterranean diet, but I'm going to clarify it because it's really more of a lifestyle than a diet. We're going to talk about that. That's really the diet that we preach in our practice for many reasons, but we'll talk about it next week.
All right. That's a great teaser. I can't wait for that. Folks, if you would like to reach Dr. Charles Guglin, he's very easy to get a hold of. Check this out. He's got a phone number. He's got an email address. He's got a website. Start with the website. This is what I always tell people to do. It's hyperfitmd.com. Once again, hyperfitmd.com. He's located at 88 Noble Avenue, Suite 105 in Milford. You can get a hold of him very easily. Area code 203-890-9777. I'll repeat that for you. Area code 203-890-9777. And you can email him very easily at cguglin@hyperfitmdamc.com. For Dr. Charles and Francesca Guglin, I'm Gary Byron. Until next Saturday, have a good one, everybody. So long.
Click.